I, Dr. Kavita Singh, Associate Professor of Law, working in WBNUJS. My teaching experience is more than 15 years and I have been teaching criminology, criminal law, victimology, international taxation and family law. For the purpose of socio-economic offences, I am the coordinator of this paper and would discuss in the present module on money laundering. Money laundering is a socio-economic offence or a white collar crime. It cannot be compared or considered as street crimes and has its own nuances. There is no individual victim, but impact is on the society as a whole or against nations or economies. The rule of law and governance in a particular nation is overhauled by such organized crimes. The scheme is to make profits for the doers and is performed with assistance from groups of individuals working for the same. Objective: siphoning money illegally by hiding the money or cash. The illegal origin is the major concern that the money involved at times for the government. This money can originate from serious criminal activities like sales of arms, smuggling and corruption, drugs trafficking, tax evasion, insider trading, etc. Computers related for fraud and microfinance dealings are the recently introduced means of procuring money and making profits. The funds are so controlled to avoid the glaring gaze of the regulators or the authorities, and then the processes of conversion of laundering of the money begins. Money is changed, transactions are made and channelization of funds are so created to dodge the law enforcement authorities, and if done successfully, it legitimizes the money which is used by the doer, and the proceeds are invested in the mainstream of the economy as legitimately earned money. The use of the proceeds while escaping and enforcement agencies makes crime of such nature attractive. Objective of the module: to induce the concept of money laundering and its processes, to understand in details the Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002, to explain the position of statutes and international conventions dealing with socio-economic offences of money laundering across the globe and India. To understand the role of courts of law in curbing the menace of money laundering and its perspective. To elaborate upon positions in India is in as per the statute and the practice. Impact of money laundering. Money laundering cripples the economic development and the growth of the nation. Integrity of the financial institutions is affected and raises concerns in the minds of the consumers and the investors. In a developing nation, the menace aggravates as majority of the population is under poverty, and the depravity caused by the offence creates an imbalance by divesting resources. Now we come to the salient features of the Money Laundering Act. Some of the salient features of legislation are attachment of property. As per this act, attachment means prohibition of transfer, conversion, disposition or movement of property by an expressly issued order from the concerned and relevant authorities specified by the statute. In chapter 3 of the act, section 5 to 11 proceeds from the crime. This is inclusive of property derived or obtained either directly or indirectly by a person from an activity generally criminal in nature in relation to a scheduled offence. Intermediaries, the agents or mediators who facilitate the process, for instance share brokers, traders, sub brokers, etc., play a major role in enabling the conversion of the money. The reporting entity is required to keep a record of all materials information relating to money laundering and forward the arms to the director. Such information should be preserved for 5 years. Functioning of the reporting entity is supervised by the director, who is empowered to impose penalty, orders audit of accounts and issue warning in any instances of violation of obligations. Central government, upon consultation with the Reserve Bank of India, is authorized to specify rules to manage information of the reporting entity. Investigation. The statute provides for investigation in the proceeds by the director or by an authority to determine whether the process of money laundering has actually been converted to gather evidence, as socio-economic offences are difficult to be proved and the fixation of owners of omitting the crime is an uphill task act of money laundering. The legislation specifies as to how whosoever directly or indirectly attempts to involve or indulge in activity of conversion or provide assistance of any manner in connection with the crime or the proceeds of the crime by concealing, procuring or acquiring property or claiming any part of it, also held responsible and accountable. Now coming down to punishment, the act lays down punishment for the crime to be committed in terms of imprisonment not less than 3 years, which can go to the extent of 7 years, and fine or both. Chapter 10, section 62 to 69 deals with summons, searches and seizure. As per the act of the power of conducting survey, seizure and scrutiny of the records kept at any place in conferred upon the adjudicating authorities. The authorities can direct any official under its authority to conduct the same and collect relevant information, place identification marks and send a report of the same to the authorities for appropriate actions. Search of a person has to be specifically ordered by the central government, but the authority cannot in any situation detain the person for more than 24 hours, ensure presence of 2 witnesses and prepare a list of items seized which would be signed by the witnesses and be forwarded to the adjudicating authority. Property confiscated or frozen under the Act can be retained for 180 days and it can only be extended by the adjudicating authority beyond the period upon satisfaction of merits of the case and facts. The court or adjudicating authority can also direct release of the property at any point of time. There shall be presumption of ownership of property and records recovered from the persons. Possession. Now coming down to burden of proof. Burden of proof is on the accused to prove not guilty as per the provision of this Act. Offences under the Act are cognizable and non-bailable. Chapter 5, section 16 to 24, authority to adjudicate. Central government can appoint by gazetted notification one or more person not below the rank of joint secretary to the government of India as adjudicating authority to exercise the jurisdiction, power and authority to prevent commission of the offence and recognize the offender for the courts of law to decide the offence. These authorities are empowered to enter into efficient and reasonable belief of commission of an offence as per the Act within the limits of area assigned to them and the power delegated upon them. The power extends to examination of the accounts, inspection of books of accounts, and the authorities can also order production of specific books or relevant records. Any book or record, if considered relevant for production in a proceeding, can be legitimately seized by the authorities. Adjudicating authorities has the autonomy to decide the process of regulation. Administrator, the property laundered is taken care of, that is managed after confiscation by an administrator who acts in accordance with the instruction of the central government. Now coming down to appellate tribunal, appeals from an order of the adjudicating authority lies with the appellate tribunal as constituted by the central government under chapter 6 section 25 to 42 of the Act. The tribunal consists of 2 members and is headed by the chairman. Appointment and termination of the members lies with the central government. Special courts, central government is empowered to, upon consultation with the High Court of a particular state, to designate the Court of Sessions as special court. These special courts can try all scheduled offences, and offences under section 3 and 4 can also be tried only after authority requests for the same. Chapter 7 section 43 to 47 takes care of it. Process of money laundering. There are 3 processes involved in the offence of money laundering. Depending on their stage of committal, these processes can be classified into first one placement, second layering and third integration. Coming to placement, this is a first step in the cycle. Currencies gained through illegal activities or unaccountable means are disposed of by doer as immediately as possible. Such disposal is by deposition in the financial institutions, changing of the notes with currency of lower denominations, spending in retail economy or acquisition of property or immovable assets. The intention in this stage is to hide or stash away the currency without being detected by the concerned authority, and easy quick transformation in a more acceptable means, such as gold, traveler's check or real estate investments. Otherwise, the money is deposited in a multiple accounts, and though numerous transactions, also termed as smurfing, high value transactions would raise concerns and browse so that means are kept to the conspicuous laws and money is distributed without being prima facie susceptible. Coming down to layering, this is the secondary process where the doers of the offence or committer of the offence or his associates seek recourse to processes of creating complicated details origin of the funds. The layering is so designed frivolously and eliminate the existing trails of origin of the money and technically concealing it with documentations and declaration of the ownership of the funds by the owner offset. Now coming to offset accounts manipulation of the books, transactions of gold, over invoicing or under invoicing of the exports and imports, electronic transfers from different tax havens, bank to bank transactions, purchase of precious stones and metals are some of the commonly resorted means. The transfers are disguised as payment of goods or services and given a legitimate appearance. The agenda is to dilute the origin of money and then save through the illegal duties on the same money to transform it to its color to white, ultimately making the origin undetectable. It is more of a process to channelize the funds systematically. It is changed so many hands or accounts that the count of its origin is bleak and unfathomable task with the camouflage of series of movements. Coming down to integration, this is a final and last stage of process leading to offence of money laundering. Illegal funds are induced in the market through placement and layering, making it appear to be legitimately owned in the economy as genuine income. Integration is more properly done once the legitimate earned money in the legitimate business and practices is a process to introduce the funds and an investment into a more prominently visible transaction is made, such as luxury assets, real estate, without being caught or recognized as an offender. If trapped at this stage, the doer easily escapes the onus of the authorities fail to prove beyond reasonable doubt the existence of documentation of being involved. This is the execution stage of the work involved in the previous stages. Let me give you an illustration. Mr. X, an Indian citizen, tends to convert an amount of 1 million Indian rupee illegally earned money. This is money laundering and is committed in 3 processes. First stage, placement, spends in retail, invests in retail economy, converts the currency in smaller denominations, travelers checks, smurf, small transactions from numerous banks into different accounts. Secondly, or the second stage, layering, he designs frivolous and eliminate the existing trails of origin of the money. Offset accounts manipulations of the books, transactions of gold, over invoicing or under invoicing of the export and import, electronic transfer from different tax havens, bank to bank transactions, purchase of precious stones and metals. Transfers are disguised as payment of goods or services. Third stage, integration, the money is reintroduced in legitimate transactions. The transactions are prominently visible as luxury assets, real estate asset, layering making the owner legitimately capable of spending the money. International conventions on money laundering. Position in India. India as a developing country exposes to the needs and requirements of liberalization, privatization and globalization, has included in various legislations the provision to curb or eliminating scope of money laundering, and entrusted specific institutionalized agencies to deal with the socio-economic offence. This section deals with enumeration of legislations either than Preventing of Money Laundering Act 2002 and the regulators or enforcement agencies. Legislations before PMLA and major statutes before enactment of the Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002 to curb and prevent the crime of money laundering and related activities were the Income Tax Act 1961, the Conversion of Foreign Exchange and Prevention of Smuggling Activities Act 1974, the Smugglers and Foreign Exchange Manipulators Act 1976, the Narcotics, Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act 1985, the Benami Transaction Prohibition Act 1988, the Prevention of Illicit Trafficking in Narcotics, Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act 1988, the Foreign Exchange Management Act 2000, Regulators of Enforcement Agencies, Financial Intelligence Units. Financial Intelligence Unit is a nodal agency for managing the anti-money laundering system in the country and helps in coordinating and strengthening the efforts of national and international intelligence, investigation and enforcement agencies against money laundering and related crimes. The agency acts as an interface in between the financial sector and the law enforcement agency as per the rules of the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Banks are to report of suspicious transactions and all transactions involving receipt by the non-profit organization of value more than 10 lakh rupees or its equivalent in foreign currency. Appropriate information is disseminated to the relevant intelligence law enforcement agencies, Central Board of Direct Taxes, Central Board of Excise and Customs, Enforcement Directorate, Narcotics Control Bureau, Central Bureau of Investigation, intelligence agencies and regulators of financial sector. Role of Reserve Bank of India in prevention of money laundering. As the lender of last resort, the bankers of bank, the offence of conversion of money in the developing nation was causing steady depletion of resources. The Reserve Bank of India introduced and laid down standards and procedures to increase transparency and decrease the conversion on sly. Master circulars were issued introducing the know your customer, anti-money laundering and combating of financing of terrorism as obligatory and mandatory provision in compliance to the provisions of the Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002. The banks are advised to follow a procedure to identify their customers and obtain legitimate proof of their identity, which would assess their credibility and also monitor transactions from particular accounts and nature of the dealings. This will also ease the responsibility of the authorities who can by monitoring accounts and transactions deal with the offence or ascertain the persons involved. Now we will discuss judicial trend. In B. Ramaraju versus Union of India 2011, a writ petition was filed challenging provisions of the Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002 and its amendments. The provisions under section 2 subclause 1 was challenged. The issue in this case was whether property owned by or in possession of a person other than the person charged of having committed a scheduled offence under the act was liable to be confiscated or attached in proceedings, and in this context the validity of section 2(1) was challenged. The court held that the object of the statute was to prevent money laundering and connected activities and confiscation of the proceeds of the crime and prevention of legitimization of the money earned through illegal or unaccountable means through scrupulous investments to acquire movable or immovable properties or by the process of layering proceeds of crime is an expandable term as per the act and thus would cover the property owned by the person other than the person charged with scheduled offence and was equally liable to attachment or confiscation as per chapter 3 of the Money Laundering Act. In this particular case, retrospective operation of section 5 of PMLA was also challenged as whether the provision of the second proviso of section 5 was applicable to the property acquired prior to the enforcement of the provisions and is also whether proviso of section 5 was applicable to the property acquired prior to the enforcement of the provisions and is so whether provision is invalid for retrospective penalization. The court held that huge quantum of illegally acquired property vitiates the rule of law and unravels the fragile integrity of public officials and state actors, threatening the sovereignty of the nation. Parliament is the authority to legislate statutes and legislations provided for forfeiture of proceeds of crime as produce of specified criminality, and thus the provision of second proviso of section 5 were applicable to the property acquired even prior to coming in force of the particular provisions, and even though even so were not invalid for retrospective penalization. The Supreme Court determined the constitutionality of the adjudicating authority and the appellate tribunal under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2000 in Parina Swarup versus Union of India. A social action litigation or PIL as generally used under article 32 of the Constitution was filed seeking to declare various sections of the act. Section 6 deals with adjudicating authorities, composition, power, etc. Section 25 deals with establishment of appellate tribunal. Section 27 talks about composition and appellate tribunal. Section 28 talks about qualification for appointment of chairperson and members of appellate tribunal. Section 32 talks about resignation and removal of, and section 40 members, etc. The ultra vires of article 14, 19, 21, 50 and 323B of the Constitution of India. The contentions before the court were that the provisions of the act were in breach of the scheme of the constitutional provisions and curbed the power of judiciary. The separation of power of the judiciary and the executive was the concern. The court observed that there is a need to draw a line which neither the executive nor the judiciary shall cross for misguided desires not to take over and perform judicial functions and powers of the state as exercised by the courts. In Abdul Karim Telgi, most commonly known as the fake stamp paper scam, the court did not verbatimly apply to the cases case language or provisions of the statute, that is the Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002, but examined the activities of the accused in detail along with the loss and damages caused to the government. It then observed that the punishment for such crimes should be in proportion to the criminal act. Thus, the doctrine of proportionality was discussed and elaborated upon. Abdul Karim Telgi used chemically washed stamps and introduced them as stamp papers by washing away the original contents by the use of chemicals. The syndicate very well manipulated the absence of branding of new stamps and circulated the old stamps, mocking the gap in the system as the used stamps were not cancelled or marked. The receipt of the central stamp office does not have any security features which eased duplication of the stamps, and the genuine copy of the stamps was shown to the customers to convince them of its originality. The officials of the security press Nasik were also tutored so as to make them participate in the process. In this manner, the government machinery was used to initially print the stamp papers, and subsequently similar machines was procured to counterfeit the stamps. It was held by the trial court that there were evidences to prove that Abdul Karim Telgi was through a hired office in Indore, an apartment on rent, was carrying on with the business of sale of fake government revenue papers. Such sale caused loss to the government and gain to the accused. The accused was found guilty of the offence under the Indian Penal Code and sentenced to various terms of imprisonment. An appeal to the High Court against the order of the trial court was filed. High Court dismissed the appeal and held that considering the making out of a consummate crime and the resultant loss caused to the public revenue by the sale of fake and counterfeit revenue stamps and papers, the substantial loss to the government was gained to the accused, but the court expressed how in these circumstances it cannot be termed to be crime, but very well falls within the category of white collar crime. An economic offence with cascading effect, and as exceptional case law should come down with heavy hands to deal with the persons as well, create a deterrent effect on the society at large against such crimes. In the case of Iqbal Mirchi, full blown investigation was conducted for the suspected funds being catered to the terror groups, and Hawala operations of the company were availed to fictitious transaction in the question, and enforcement directorate was looking for the scam of rupees 3 crore. This money was suspected to be laundered by the family members and associates of late Iqbal Mirchi. 2013, late Iqbal Mirchi was suspected to have used the Hawala route to launder and move funds to purchase properties in the least 10 countries and aid his associates. The law enforcement agency registered a case under the Foreign Exchange Management Act to prove the series of real estate transaction and revealed that 4 buildings in Mumbai were sold off by the family members of Iqbal Mirchi through fake identities and flouted regulations of the Reserve Bank of India. And the FEMA rules, notice was issued by the agencies to the family members, banking operations and records were inspected, the investigation was handed over by the court to the special team of investigation when numerous assets and transnational dealings were discovered. In Shivkant Tripathi versus State of Uttar Pradesh, the petitioner lodged FIR alleging commission of offence as per the schedule of the Prevention of Money Laundering Act by an official abusing his office of profit and indulging in money laundering through web of shell companies. Despite investigation, no report was submitted by the enforcement directorate under the this legislation. The court observed that in such an instances wherein the enforcement directorate failed to file a report as the ingredients to the constitute an offence under section 3 and 4 of the PMLA Act was missing, despite there being evidences otherwise to prove the laundering of money, raises a responsibility on the court to keep a strict check and control over the actions of the authorities under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act and direct them to do the act as per the act in the duty bound manner. Now coming to the conclusion, money laundering is a process of transforming through series of stages and proceeds of the illegal or criminal activity into legitimate money, technological modernization and development of the economy, provides for healthy grounds to flourish for such criminals. Experts and financial institutions play a major role in the processes. Socio-economic offences are usually transnational, therefore, the issue is complicated and the difficulties manifold. Penal ways and effective enforcement paraphernalia will ensure that the provisions of the legislation are implemented effectively. Judicial authorities also play a very important role and define the roles and extent of influence of authorities in white collar crime, which needs a level of precision and clarity to be dealt with due to the changing dynamics and more so in a developing nation like India, wherein the introduction of foreign investment and commercialization has increased the in manifolds. Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002 is a specific legislation in India to combat money laundering and prevent the crime of money laundering and any related issues such as confiscation, seizure of property, etc. It outlines the definition of crime, the adjudicating authorities, the punishment agencies and the duties of the financial institutions and the enforcement agencies are manifold. The Act identifies certain offences under the Indian Penal Code, the Narcotics, Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act, the Arms Act, the Wildlife Protection Act, the Immoral Trafficking Prevention Act and the Prevention of Corruption Act. Enforcement agencies, judicial authorities and the financial institution play a major role in determining the scope of the commission of crime, while the developing nature with the increased influx of foreign exchange and investment and number of shells companies and non-profit organizations. Regulation has to be systematic and in accordance with the nature of crime. Socio-economic offences without victims and expertise involved. Some of the effective means of combating crime of money laundering are introduction of plastic money, intellectual banking, anti-money laundering programs and sensitization of the masses about the nuances of the crime so as to detection of the crime in early stage without much harm or loss to the society and adverse effect on the economic growth of the country. Thank you.